So I'm going to present two topics. And the first one is identify invariant patterns in ECG and respiratory waveforms. This is a collaborative work with my student and Dr. Fink, Dr. Lane, and Dr. Allen, together with his assistant, Dr. Vonak. And we're from University of Arizona. So in this presentation, I'm going to first discuss vagus nerve and its stimulations. And then I'm going to talk about a stress management system that using an integrated sensor nodes and try to provide a feedback system design. So the purpose of the system is try to detect in real time the heart rate variability and then estimate the stress level. And then we have a new idea of using mutual information-based noise template generation to understand what exactly the signals in the ECG waveforms look like to get a very accurate HRV or heart rate variability computation. And afterwards, I'm going to present some experiment result and conclude this presentation. So, vagus nerve. Actually, this is the nerve X, which actually come down from the brainstem to various organs of the body. Their purpose is to calm them down. When we say that, it's in other words, is relax them. This goes against another set of nerves, which is the sympathetic nerves. They normally go from the spine, travel to the organs. This is during emergent times and the emergency times. These nerves basically create a stress activity. So vagus nerve literally calms them, but sympathetic nerves create stress activity. So this is exactly against each other. So in this talk, we actually talk about how to stimulate the vagus nerve. These are the two ways, the general ways, stimulate vagus nerve. One on the left-hand side is a pulse generator. It actually can be worn outside the clothes, but there is this electrodes. They are going to be embedded inside the body, tie exactly onto the vagus nerve itself. The whole idea is try to reduce the inflammation within the cells of organ. Okay? There is another way, which is on the right-hand side. This is called electrocore. This device is already on the market. So this one is try to provide a non-invasive way to stimulate the vagus nerve. There are a number of papers have already shown that relaxation going through this vagus nerve can reduce the inflammation. But there's also a traditional way. We call it yoga. And the whole idea here is using the different breathing patterns to stimulate the vagus nerve and relax the whole human body. This has been a way of relax people in India and also in the majority of China as well. So what I'm showing here, there are 4 different patterns of yoga breathing. So if you take a look, we actually number them. We call them a 446, 426, 414, 424. So you have a first slope. This is basically inhale. You breathe in, and then you hold your breath, and then you exhale. So this means a 4-second inhale and hold 4 seconds and exhale 6 seconds. So this is basically one particular breathing pattern. Of course, you have 4 different types, and in the literature you can find more. So which pattern should we follow? Now, normally, it depends on what kind of breathing patterns that you get adjust to easily, the most optimal ones. And then we can pick it up, and then you can follow this pattern to do the exercise. But the first key question is, how do we know that when we need them? So in other words, we only do yoga breathing exercise when we are under stress. But how do you know that somebody is under stress? There are some symptoms. Some people realize they are under stress, but most of the time, people don't really realize they are under stress. So for about 20-something years, there's already a bunch of research have been done and verified that heart rate variability actually has a very close correlation with stress. So the lower the heart rate variability, the more stress we have. So in other ways, if we can monitor the heart rate variability accurately, then we can give people a very accurate estimation about their stress level. But then we also need to know in real time how much stress this person is under. That means we have to do a real-time measurement and find out when at what time we can initiate a yoga breathing exercise. And one of the key item here is the measurement, the real-time measurement. This has to be done by a very good sensor node and together with some programs that can process the data that from the sensor node. And this sensor node has to be highly sensitive and low power because we have to wear it very long hours during the day, and they should have high signal noise ratio. So that way the data we acquired from the sensor node can be very accurate. So one of the sensor nodes that we used is called BioPatch. And let me give you a clear idea what this looks like. This is the BioPatch. And it's basically one integrated sensor nodes. It's sticked on the chest, and it has a 2-point. So we can get fairly accurate ECG data. And on the right-hand side, you see this is a Samsung phone. So basically, going through Bluetooth, the data from this BioPatch is going to be transmitted into the Samsung phone. Okay. And then the computation of this heart rate variability is completely estimated by the program on this phone. So this is not just the endpoint, because afterwards we also have to connect with the patient record, which is the EHR, electrical health record. And normally these are deposited on the remote database, and this has to be connected so we have an understanding about whether this is a norm for this particular patient, because everybody has a nominal value of heart rate variability. If you are lower than that, then you are under stress. If you're higher than that, and then you're fine. So we have to find out the norm. Now, in terms of software design, of course, we have to get onto the platform for the apps on the smartphone. This is normally done by Android or based on what kind of phone you use, right? It could be iPhone platform from the Apple. And from the remote side, definitely we have to use various of ways to compute the heart rate variability. Here listed out basically about 6 different ways that we can compute the heart rate variability. I'm going to discuss one of the ways in the next slide. And in order to find out heart rate variability, we have to detect in good accuracy about what exactly the peak values are. And the whole process is summarized in this diagram. Basically, For every patient, you have to first create a baseline so we know what exactly your nominal heart rate variability value is. Just give you an example. For example, I was tested and my nominal value is about 120. And so if I'm higher than that, I'm fine. Lower, much lower than that, and then I'm under stress. For example, right now could be the case. Anyway, so once we create that baseline, we do real-time heart rate variability monitoring through the biopatch and the phone. So once we see that you actually higher than the threshold, you're fine, lower than the threshold, initiate the breathing pattern, and then you start to do yoga breathing. And this breathing pattern, basically, it's look like a little ball, inflated, deflated, but it follows exactly the same pace as a 4-4-6 or 4-2-6, based on the patterns that I can follow. Okay, heart rate variability computation. One of the key problems is accurately identify the heart rate variability. And this is computed by using the R2R peak. Let me just briefly introduce what exactly the definition of R2R peak. This is one kind of just sort of a schematic of this ECG waveform. We have waveform part 1 and part 2. And as you can see that there's a P wave here, this is a Q, and there's R peak, S, and this is a T wave. So from this R peak to the next R peak, this is called R2R interval. And then we want to find out the difference between various different R2R intervals. And this is estimated by this root mean square, this RMSD value, this standard derivatives, deviation, yeah. So, and then this is computed by using this particular equation, and this is the R2R peak from the next one, and this is the current one. So we are going to have at least 4 R2R peaks to compute one of this. So we can find out, no, 3. So we can find out exactly what's the difference between 2 R2R intervals. This is an ideal case. In reality, the ECG waveform can be pretty messy, for example, here. And this is because when we wear the biopatch, there's no need for us to sit down all day to do the measurement for 12 hours because we may have some activities. We may be running, bicycling, and sleeping. And unfortunately, the ECG waveform can change drastically when you have different activities. And one of the major issues is sensor may accurately collect the data, but they don't really know what's going on with the data, whether this is effective data or it's actually a noisy one. But once the QRS, which is a tool, analyze the ECG waveform, they normally don't really have any idea what's going on with the data that collected by sensor nodes. So there's a gap in between. And as you can see that there's always a square wave at the beginning. This is a slightly nicer way of putting it because normally what happens is when you first put the patch on or when you just punch on your chest, they always generate a big waveform at the beginning. Some of this noise can be easily filtered by using a frequency-based filter, but not all of them can. So one of the approach we use is called mutual information-based template. The whole idea here is, after all, these ECG waveforms, they're supposed to be periodic. And so as we can see that if we change it using the phase kind of transform, they're supposed to circle around. For example, one of the phase transformation could be the Fourier transformation. And at the same time, because of the noise issues, they are doing this and this, but they also kind of spreading out a little bit, spreading out. And some other times, they may even go to, sorry. Battery.
The power cable.
Yeah.
There's a plug up here.
Right here? Okay.
I will do it.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So basically, we use a phase transform and mutual information to find the periodic changes and use those as a pattern to actually screen out the noise information. So let me show you some of the waveforms. So these are the R2R peaks of the correct waveforms, and these basically are the mutual information computation. Whenever there is a correlation between one periodic waveform next to the other, then you see a peak of means they are mutually correlated. So that's how we did the computation. And on this figure, basically showing that if you are exactly matched, you're supposed to be getting onto the 45-degree, this line. But then there are another kind of cycle. This doesn't match with the previous one, which is like the red one. It's completely going offline. And so this one is, so it's actually you have to run or remotely or on your cell phone, have to run this program all the time. You have to chase your waveform, make sure that it is the template that you wanted. So at a different time, you have to set up a time how long you want to chase it. So this is basically choosing different seconds and try to figure out whether this is the template you're doing. So in reality, the more templates you have, when I say templates, means the kind of periodic kind of the way how your heart beats, the more kind of the template we have to chase in real time. Okay. So this is a 3D view of taking a look at whether the window size versus the length of the chasing time and together with the mutual information. So the peaks here means match. Valley means no match. Okay. So let me show you also something. So for example, here, you can see that this is one ECG waveform from one of the users. It's completely different, 3 patterns, pattern 1, pattern 2, and pattern 3. But this algorithm identified them correctly and find out this is pattern 3, this is pattern 2, and this is pattern 1. And what happened is basically running algorithm real time and find out which one is the match in real time. Because the whole reason is because during the real-time sim monitoring, this one could be just one cycle and all of a sudden change it into pattern 3. So we have to do it all the time. And this one is a display on users' iPhone or smartphone about what exactly stress level they experience in color. And high stress normally using red, and then once we gradually cool down and we use this nice blue color. So this pretty much concludes this part of presentation. Any questions?
I
Yes.
have maybe one question.
Okay.
The ECG amplitude,
Uh-huh.
you base on it, is it the default one of the ECG machine,
Uh-huh.
or is it your own? Because you have differences between the blue one, the green one, and the last one on the right side.
This is that particular waveform?
Yeah, if you can go back maybe
Okay.
to the slide. Yeah, that one. I
Okay.
mean, this ECG waveform amplitude,
Uh-huh.
is it the one, the default of the ECG? We know that in the ECG, on the ECG machine,
Uh-huh.
there is a different amplitude you can.
Yeah, they do. So this
Is it the
portion,
default or is it your own of the experiment?
it's the own of the experiment. But we do see the migration of the levels, like changes on even on this particular 2 kind of point sensor node. Yeah.
Thank you. Please.
So, in your patient population or your subjects, did you take into account how long they've been doing yoga, like was it new, or was it a criteria for selection for people doing yoga? And second is, did you do any age stratification, like what age group you were looking at?
Okay, sure. So there is a timeline, like for example, if you're doing yoga pattern exercise, for me, like 20 minutes, if I still cannot calm down, then there is basically a alarming signal will send to the doctor, which is Dr. Lane, because he's a psychiatrist, and basically saying I'm actually in a very stressful situation, and I cannot doing a self-regulation kind of exercise. So hopefully that answers your first question. The second question, the aging-related effect, is very interesting because once the kid was born, the HRV is 0. That means they don't really, there's no stress or non-stress, basically. And then another interesting thing is the HRV reduced drastically in older patient. And I don't know whether that's an indication they get stressed for a long time, or I don't know how to say that, but that's the nominal value that we collect.
So this pattern here is for 3 different people or 1 person?
1 person,
At different times?
yes,
Under time?
yes.
I guess my question is that I see that heat map, right, for the experiment, for example,
Uh-huh,
we have this yellow and this red.
yeah.
So how do you,
Oh.
from that, the wave,
I see. This is not exactly a clear match here. This is actually you accumulated for a little bit because this is not just a 3 waveform, and it probably will take about a couple of maybe 20, 30 minutes or even longer because you have a lot of R2R peaks and you calculate the heart rate variability, use RMSSD value and find out. And then that's an indication whether it changes or not. So it could be altered between red and yellow because sometimes you have like a transient changes in between. Yeah.
but it catches that?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, and then what's the stage 1, 2, and 3?
So this is stages actually is the related with when you have a stress and I start to do the yoga breathing Okay, and stage 1 could be potentially one pattern that I can easily follow because my breathing pattern may not match at the beginning with any of the yoga breathing pattern, and it picked up something that matches well with my current breathing pattern, so it gives you a easier entrance to do the exercise. And then it goes to the slightly more difficult one and slightly more difficult one. And then once you completed the 3 stages, if you still cannot relax, and then something is seriously, yeah.
Do you have like a curve that shows like different time points? So you see the color, from red gradually to like blue.
I don't have it here, but we do have it in the lab. Yep.
So thank you very much.
Okay.
I suggest maybe the next one you do it on your real time.
Okay.
Is it better so that it's not behind each other, or as you like?
I can do
Because
the
not
next
too much
one.
time. You
Okay,
like to
10
start?
minutes?
10
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
So we will start with the second paper of Dr. Janet Roveda
Okay,
for
so
10 minutes.
so this is a collaborative work with Dr. Powers. So if you have any questions, you can ask her. So this is a secure and compressed data acquisition for telemedicine applications. So I'm going to skip this and then just give you some ideas what we meant. So basically, this is the original image, and there's some cancer kind of situation that happened. This is the breast cancer part of it. And then you have the sensor array through the buffer, so we chopped it into columns, and then we go through this comparator array and get into the memory. So this is part of our design. Not going into great detail, what really happened is we have to actually, on the point of care side, on the patient side, we have to build a security kind of automatically on top of that to protect both the data and the algorithm that you actually, for example, how you collect all the data. And then on the remote side, normally it could be the doctor's office or even on the cloud. We have to reconstruct the image if they want to see a full-blown of the original image. And then we have to do the content-based search, and we have to establish the security-based privacy computation. And so that is related to how you reconstruct the image itself, because it's protected even with the data and algorithm. And so when you reconstruct it, it has to be protected as well. So finally, you only see the image. So, having said that, you actually can also go the other way around. Let's say that you find out some symptoms, and then we don't know what's going on. And so this is a part of similar to the previous figure, and it goes all to the lookup table. But then this shows how we do the query. Query means a search. So we have some symptom, we compress the data, and then we find out that there are some features we cannot identify. And then remotely on the cloud, there is a database. And we want to find out whether this feature has been identified before in the database. So another layer that we investigated is actually we're not doing a full-blown recovered image content-based search like these days everybody is doing. So you have a full-blown image and completely kind of can see what's going on, and then you do a search based on that. Now this is, we're talking about that the data is completely compressed. And so in some way it's protected because you don't really know what this is. It looks like this, completely random. All the features are completely covered. And then, but we do a query based on the compressed data. How can that be possible? Well, this is possible if you do a linear-based compression. And this is the key idea of compressive sensing. And so what happened is with compressive sensing that you have a selection matrix with the input, and you create something, compress the data, look like this. The key difference between compressive sensing and the regular data compression algorithm, for example, JPEG, and various of others, is that the compressive sensing really keep the, it's isomorphic, means the points between points, the relative distance is actually kept the same. And that means if you have a feature, even though you cannot identify by our eyes, like the data like here, but we certainly using computation mechanism can find out without recover the whole image, still identify whether the feature is embedded or not. Okay. So this is basically a diagram. I don't want to go too much of a detail, but this shows that how we actually can combine the security algorithm at the point of care before you transmit the data out, that secure how we create a compressive sensing data and how we transmit it. So it's a two-layer of protection. And this is the circuit that we build in hardware to actually really provide this two layers of protection, protect the data and also protect the algorithm. And these are some experiment results. So let me first show you the chip. We call it secure IC chip. It's fabricated. And so this shows the diagram of this particular chip. It's not this big. It's actually, if you take a look, it is less than 2 centimeter by 2 centimeter. Very, very, not centimeter, millimeter. Okay, very tiny. And it uses low power and only 16 milliwatts. Okay, and the gate count is over 60,000 gates inside. Just try to protect our algorithm. And so compared with the published chip, and this one actually right now is have the least amount of area and the best throughput. And technology node is a 90 nanometer technology node with a TSMC. And this is basically the channel length for each transistor. And this is the power consumption. Okay, so let me show you some experiment results. So, so here on the top basically shows you what exactly the reduction we can achieve. If you take a look, here is the dense and the senior cancer. The whole reason we talk about like this is the breast tissue getting kind of less dense when we age. So for example, on the left-hand side is a senior female's breast. On the right-hand side is a young woman, like in the 30s breast. So when they do the detection, and as you can see that this pixel distribution in terms of intensity is completely different. So then the number of bits required in terms of resolution is also different. So for people who with the dense kind of breast tissue, normally you end up with a 16-bit. And then, of course, for some cancer patient with really the dense breast, they actually can go up for 18-bit. So when I say bit, it really means the number of bit counts that we need to record the difference of the pixel. Okay, so in this case, the bit counts really affect the size of your circuit. The higher the bit amount, the more kind of the number of gates involved required for the comparator array. And so this is the amount of the data reduction, and it goes from 32% all the way to 69%, which is close about the 70% of reduction. And here, the last one is signal-noise ratio. Okay, here's some references.
Thank you very much. Is there any question?
Okay. Here?
Oh. Right, okay. So from the very top, that's the image memory.
Yeah.
And then it goes through the sensor array.
Yeah.
And when you say buffers, what is that?
Buffer is, we actually, each buffer stored one's columns of the original signal, image, mammogram image.
So what's the format of the original?
It's analog format. Analog format, okay, sorry. So I think if you take a look at this image and then if you want to read out, treating image as a matrix of data. If you read out each data, if it's a digital one, it will show like it's all 0, 1s. It's binary. Okay, if it's analog, it's just.
You were saying analog.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yeah.
Analog.
Yeah.
I would like to ask, normally when we are purchasing mammography, okay, we request the display to be 5 megapixel. So normally for any DICOM image, up to 2 to 3 megapixel, it's enough because the price is very high difference. So I think there is a dependence between the bits you choose there and the 5 megapixel normally should be for the breast cancers to see the dots which we cannot see on the 2 megapixel.
Sure. I think the 2 megapixel you're talking about is probably already digitized. Most of the images inside the DICOM, this particular database, is actually digitized image. And we are trying to kind of redesign the process of this, how you transform from the original analog image to the digital one, and then doing the data compression in between.
The idea is not to lose any information in that transformation, because if you take a look at that, how much of that figure at the top actually doesn't have any data in it? A lot.
Yes, a lot.
So the whole idea is to capture the data, not to change that data, but to put it in a form which is
Keep it secure.
doesn't take up as much space, so that you can go back and reconstruct it. And if
Yes.
it's done correctly, you won't be able to see the difference between that and one that's gone through that process, but the size is considerably smaller. That was the intent.
Yeah. So it should not even go up to 2 megabyte pixel anyway. So this is the whole idea.
Thank you very much.